We start this 4 o'clock hour. One of our favorite guests, Cole Cubelic, ESPN, joins us with Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak. Cole, I could ask you about the whatever might be going on in college athletics, college football, but I want to know, what's it like to coach 6-year-old coach pitch? How much of a challenge was that for you?
It's been a real challenge this year. I wasn't actually the head coach. I decided to help, and there's some moments that you have to step away, and you just kind of realize that things would be better if you weren't involved. And that's probably the hardest part, is having that realization that I need to let somebody else do this, even though you really want to. But my mantra, whether I've helped out with basketball, I've helped out with soccer, I've gone into it with 3 rules, man. Have fun, try hard, don't complain. And I've always taken the approach that if we do those 3 things, it's going to be a good day. We'll figure all the other stuff out as we go, whether it's technique, fundamentals, which way to run after you hit the ball, which base to tag, depending on how many runners are on. We'll get to that at some point. We're 6 years old. It's okay. But we're going to have a good time. We're going to try hard, and we're damn sure not going to complain. That probably should be number 1, but I just felt like the have fun part should probably take precedent.
You ever, as the coach, get the temptation to brush a kid back because he's crowding the plate just to teach him, the game?
No, I haven't been the official pitcher yet. I haven't had a chance to do that, and I don't think I would, even if I was granted that opportunity. But I could see where some coaches might be tempted to do that.
Right now, there's so much going on in college athletics, and one of the stories might be the possibility of what the SEC and the Big Ten do. Will there be a breakaway? Will there be whatever's called? Craig brought it up as a Super 2 back several months ago. Do you see that happening, Cole? And if they do, what is the number you think that will be included in that particular scenario?
It's a fair question that I don't really have a good answer for, because I think there are so many different ways that it could go. Right now, I would probably think it would be in the 40s, just based on where the Big Ten and the SEC are, and it feeling like that those two are going to be playing a different game than everybody else. Could I see portions of the Big 12, the ACC, latching on, being pulled away? However, it could potentially happen. Yes, and maybe that gets into, the high 60s. I think that's also feasible. Unfortunately, it might be just a lot of what the TV networks want, and how many they think they need, and then that'll dictate. Okay, we need 4 more. We need 2 more. You guys need to get to this, which. I don't even, to be perfectly honest with you guys, I don't even like to think like that. I'm not naive that none of that is happening. I would like to imagine that these conference commissioners can make decisions like that themselves. And before this last round of realignment, thought that they were making a lot of these decisions for the right reasons. And then I see, we got teams in California that are going to be coming to the Atlantic coast to play conference games. So, I think we're past all of that now. So, unfortunately, it'll probably come down to just a numbers game of what they think is best to build a schedule out and have that be competitive for brands that people are going to be interested in on a weekly basis when they play one another.
Cole, we had G.J. Kenny on the show yesterday, and we asked him about the G5 having their own rankings, and he wasn't quite nuts about that, but he was open as a head coach to say, look, if we're going to do anything, let's just have our own playoff. Do you think that is something that the G5 should consider, considering that the P4 is only going to give them 1 and never more than 1 in any of the history of the playoff?
I've been saying for years that it baffles me that there is no leadership that is at least trying to get out in front of finding a way for the group of 5 to be sustainable with whatever is next. And that might be, as you guys discussed, 32 teams, 65 teams, I don't know, whatever that is. But there are going to be some teams left behind. I think the Pac-12 is a perfect example of that and what just happened. Oregon State, I think you would agree with me. I'm not saying it's Alabama or Notre Dame. That's a quality brand. That's a school and a place that has given us good players, good teams, competitive ball, intriguing ball, and now they're just sitting there. So Washington State, same thing. And I for the longest time, this has been essentially the 25-year-old downstairs that doesn't want to move out. And his parents are paying his bills, and he's got his parents' credit cards, and they're making the car payment, and they're stocking the shelves in the pantry and the refrigerator. Why would he move out? Because he's getting all this stuff. And that number that has trickled down to the group of five, whether it be from the BCS or the college football playoff or just, the bowl system revenue that comes down, it's been getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So I don't think it's an intentional trying to wean them off of it. But at some point in time, it's going to be zero. We're going to get to a point where these bigger brands, be it 2, 3, 4 of them, whatever it is, how many ever it is, are going to say, enough is enough. We're not sharing this with you anymore because you don't determine who our national champion is, and you don't have a very large determination on how many people tune into our product and help us generate revenue. So therefore, something else has to happen. Somebody's got to come up with something. Somebody has to look at this and say, what can be sustainable next? And absolutely a playoff is. We have Trent Dilfer on our show from the region's tradition here, a senior golf tournament in Birmingham that we have every year. And we asked him about it, and he kind of said the same thing, more along the lines of he didn't know much about it. He said, from what I've heard, I think it's great. And you think about the fact of, okay, when we get action on a Tuesday night, or we get, whatever it is, the Sunbelt on a Thursday night, and all of a sudden that's number 1 versus number 6, or number 2 versus number 4, that's a different game. Even if it's a different poll and it's a different level of football. I mean, you guys are probably like me. When you see an FCS game on and it's 1 versus 3, it's a little bit more like, I'm like, all right, I want to see what's going on here. Like, give me more on these teams. I want to know about them. So I think it's a very, very tiny step in the right direction for the group of five, because the main thing I think it does is show some awareness that, hey, we are different. This is not a level playing field as much as we would like it to be. And nobody's saying that they can't find a way to win certain games on certain days. It's just from a resource standpoint, we know it's not right. We know it's not even, and we know it's not fair. So begin to try to find something that's more compelling. And I just really believe that we could have had some really good football if you're talking about a group of five playoff over the last 5, 8, 10 years, whatever that was. If you're talking about Coastal Carolina or Liberty or Troy or Louisiana Lafayette when Billy and those guys were there. I mean, there have been, I would love to have watched it. And I think that there are different ways to market it. I think there are different windows to put it in that people would watch it. And it could be sustainable. It's just, you're probably going to need some real money on the front end to get it going.
Cole, you're deep in the heart of SEC country. You're an Auburn guy. You know the league like the back of your hand. While we're sitting here speculating about kind of the bigger universal topics in college sports right now, obviously realignment's always one of those things that's in play, especially with the ongoing lawsuits. The Big Ten, they've clearly, like, they're beyond a certain footprint. They're across half the country now with their West Coast acquisitions. The SEC to me is like the perfect geographical fit, and I hope it is able to maintain that. But let's just say all hell breaks loose. What schools, when I hear all these people speculating about, Virginia, North Carolina, Clemson, whoever, who goes where, as an SEC guy, who makes sense actually being in that league beyond where they are right now that would actually fit and make sense and not necessarily just turn it into kind of what the Big Ten's becoming all over the map?
Yeah, I think it would be Virginia Tech. Because I think that fan base, I think the culture of that program, that university is very SEC-like. I think Florida State, I think Clemson would also be there. Miami, I'm going to say yes. And here's the other part of this, and this is one thing that's very confusing to me. I was going to say two things. One, you guys brought up Virginia. I have no idea the housing-wise of Virginia. I hear certain things about certain people that want them and why they want them, and I can't figure it out. And listen, I played against a really good Virginia team when I was in college. They smoked us in Auburn. We beat them the previous year, but they had Anthony Poindexter and Jerome Dingle as defensive tackle. Like, they were a very good football team. But now I don't understand, why some people, we hear these rumors about certain leagues reaching for Virginia, like they have to have them. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And then the Miami part is, then you'll start hearing people say, well, they're not going to be a good academic match for the SEC. They're not going to be they're more of an academic fit for the Big Ten. Folks, let's just stop that, okay? I don't know why outside of the Ivy League, I don't know why we're having any discussions about being an academic fit anywhere. It's not what it's about. At the end of the day, nobody really cares. And, whether it's the AAU accreditation, whatever, I think it's silly to even talk about that being a determining factor of surviving in this new age of college athletics when you're going to probably have to stay at the front of the pack and find ways to keep up with the Joneses. It's just not real, in my opinion. So I do think probably going further into Texas and, a school like Baylor, I think would be one that you would look at and say, yep, feasible, possible. TCU, maybe. Texas Tech, I think, is one that would also be considered. There, I think, as you guys know, probably going to be some other schools that try to throw some weight around and don't let those things happen. But I think we're also past that portion of it too a little bit. The Florida fans, there's always this: Florida will never let Florida State in. South Carolina's never going for a Clemson to get in. We're going to be past that pretty soon, where it's going to be, hey, they're coming, or we'd be more than happy for you guys to exit and find somewhere else to go, handle your business.
Well,
and
they're already there when they let Texas in for A&M.
100%. That's a great point.
Cole,
because there are a lot of people that would tell you that A&M would have never gone for that.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what?
Yeah.
Here's the door. Don't let it hit you. That's what we're going to start hearing in the future.
We all kind of glanced at each other. We cover the Big 12. We're right here in Waco. When you mentioned Baylor and TCU, a couple of private schools, that kind of surprised me that they would be in that mix. They've had a pretty nice run, although lately the last couple of years has not been good. You do think that Baylor and TCU would be given at least the opportunity to think about to talk about it?
I do think they would be vetted, yes, because I think the branding is strong. I mean, I think that's it's going to be the number one thing moving forward. It's one of the reasons when the Big 12 realignment happened this last time, there were a lot of people that kind of poo-pooed on BYU and didn't understand BYU and why BYU, and I couldn't understand. I didn't know what people were talking about. It's one of the strongest national brands that there is in collegiate athletics. Now, that doesn't mean that they're one of the most successful or one of the scariest, but I mean, you guys know, like I do, BYU resonates a lot of places for a lot of reasons. So that was a brilliant move to bring BYU in. I do think that we've gotten a little bit past, the geographical teams that make the most sense. But I also think Greg Sankey values it, and I think he does want, teams and universities in the footprint, and that footprint is now in Texas, so that's going to be a place that you look. And also, guys, we're going to be out here before long. If the Big Ten makes another big move, and let's just say they were to go get Clemson and Florida State and Miami, or something along those lines, and you have to sort of match that, or you have to counter that. I mean, there's only so many places you can go. And I think you're going to have to keep up somewhat from a numbers game perspective. All right, if they get to 28 or 30, we can't stay at 16 or maybe even at 18. We might have to go past 20 to just even keep up with where they're going, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. So there's got to be schools that don't exactly fit what we've been looking for or thinking about that would be in certain places, certain conferences for the last 20 or 30 years, because that's not what it's going to be anymore.
Cole Cubelic, ESPN SEC Network, with us on 365 Sports.
So, Cole, we've got a big show today. I mean, you're on here for one. We got some other guests as well. But, man, you were talking to some folks today. Kirby Smart and Nick Saban and Trent Dilfer and a few other folks. For one, any surprise at all about how great Saban did in his early media sessions there with the NFL draft? And man, what a day. Guest lineup-wise, who was the most interesting? Charles Barkley on that list as well.
There you go.
Chuck was the only one that didn't make it on that list. He had some flight issues, so he didn't get in, and he is by far our most entertaining guest when we go to this tournament every year. I'm thankful that the folks at the Regions Tradition have us. They do great work in our community. A lot of the money that they generate goes to Children's Hospital in downtown Birmingham, which is just exceptional. It's an amazing facility. But yeah, Coach Saban was great. We were both very complimentary of what he did at the draft. And, he kind of talked about the work that he put into it. And he said, hey, I didn't have anything else going on. So, he actually gave me something to do. He's been playing a lot of golf, apparently getting some lessons. Told us he played with Mark Ingram and Tua recently at a course down in Florida. And we asked him about kind of the future of college football, and he went to a place that I often go. He brought up litigation and basically just said that there's going to have to be some protection from litigation. And it's one of the things that I default to when people have these ideas of, hey, I think all we need to do for NIL is this, or all we need to do for the portal is this. And the first thing that I say is lawsuit. You're going to get sued. That's all it is. And whether the NCAA already tried to hire Thomas Mars and it didn't work. He's already back out suing them. So I agree with him that it's going to take something along those lines to protect it down the road. We had Kirby Smart on today. He was in a little bit of a hurry, but he was great. Told us that his off-season emphasis has been defending mobile quarterbacks, which I thought was interesting. You look down that schedule, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I mean, a guy in Mississippi State and Blake Saban that you guys know very well. I know they want to run him, but if they don't have a backup quarterback that they have any confidence in, they're not going to run him as much. You look at Auburn and Peyton Thorne, he can be just dangerous enough to force you to defend it. Obviously, Jalen Milroe. A lot of teams on that schedule that could be a problem with, and then maybe in the playoffs as well. So I thought that was interesting. Taylor DeVore told us that the footwork of Jalen Milroe has gotten a lot better through the spring. That's where he improved the most. Said he loves the attitude of his team, the work, the habits of his team. Said he didn't want to go so far as to say they feel rejuvenated, but they do have a little bit of a new energy. And I think that's part of the demeanor. I think that's part of his personality. And because it is very new for everyone around there, I talked to a couple of guys in that facility that are they almost don't know what to do with themselves every day because things are so different. But that's Kalen's personality. It doesn't mean that they're not going to have success. It's just he manages things in a very different way. Talked to Hugh Freeze. We actually asked Hugh Freeze about some of these Brian Kelly comments, which I think are getting a little bit misconstrued.
Yep.
I think people are taking this as Brian Kelly is saying, we're not going to help anyone with NIL ever. And that's not what he said. I think what he says is, we're not just going to guys that want to check and they're going to decide the highest bidder and that's going to be it. And by the way, what Brian Kelly said, most college coaches think the exact same way. And it's just that they want guys that fit their system, that they like their personality, that they like their scheme. Hugh told us, hey, he said there was a $1.2 million quarterback out there that we could have gone after. We thought we could have gotten, but I wanted to try to build the depth of my roster and the quality of my roster with the players and the kids and do it a different way. And I think that's the right way to do it for him right now. Stay with the quarterback that's been in your system for a year, try to grow him a little bit, try to fundamentally help him, and then see where you can go, see what you can do. So we had some great conversations. I told you guys Trent Dilfer was with us. We talked about that top 25 poll for the group of five, and he recently sort of teed his team up with I'll use air quote fingers, Players Association, which I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but there's not a Players Association in college right now, but there are multiple facets that like to tell you that they are one, which I guess now that UAB has signed up for it, that would make them a real one, even though there are no rights for them to bargain over. I don't know how you can call yourself that. That's like me saying I own a radio station, but we don't actually broadcast anything. I don't, what are we doing? So, but it's always fun out there. It's really cool. And I'm thankful to be out there every year. And then you got to talk to Jake Peavy about Shohei Ohtani, which was one of our cooler conversations that we actually had. So to hear a guy that won the Cy Young Award say that this is probably the greatest baseball player that's ever lived, like it's one thing for you guys to say it or for me to say it and we have fun with it or we debate it. But like a guy who pitched at a high level to say that and that he really believes that, I mean, that's a little different. And so that was a really impressive conversation as well.
Cole, I know you're busy. Great, like Craig said, what an incredible lineup, and thanks for feeding a lot of that information to our audience and to us. I was going to ask you this to close it out. Are you worn out with all the lawsuits? But you kind of went into that with what Saban was discussing. Are you numb to it? Is it almost to the point where it's taken away from the game?
It's not taken away from the game, so I still think the product is good. I think the product is great. The numbers are up. And I think some of the things, and I believe it or not, I actually do watch you guys a lot of my mornings when I'm doing my show prep and listen to some of the things that you said the day before. And I think you guys would understand this like I do. A lot of the things that we construe as negative or perceive as negative, be it the portal, be it NIL, all these different things, unlimited transfers, that has given us, you guys, me and Greg, other podcasts, whatever, that's given us an NFL news cycle. It's year round. It's every single day.
Yep.
I mean, Greg and I sat back and talked a couple of times like, man, these have been the best two off seasons in the history of the sport because we have stuff to talk about all the time. And whether it's realignment, whether it's playoff, whether it's going to another playoff, whether it's TV rights, coaches moving, portal, players in different places, who's going to win, how are they going to get in, group of five changing over. Like it's so much. It's a lot. I don't focus on those things. I'm much more into the actual football portion of it. I realize it's there. I know it's there. I'm not necessarily numb to it, but I also think that most viewers, listeners are becoming numb to it, so they don't necessarily want to hear us break it down every day.
That's a great point.
I think there are places that they can go and get that. There are going to be articles that they can go read. But hearing people that have relationships like you guys do, like we do, that know football and have watched and consumed football like we have, those are the opinions that they want to hear us share. I don't think that they want to hear us talking about, these lawsuits out in California with a tennis player and a swimmer that's trying to, have players become, college football athletes become employees. Like, first and foremost, for those sports to do that is asinine, but that's a topic for a whole nother show.
Cole, thanks for the compliments, and also with what you do. And it's a loud podcast like what we do, what you do as well with Greg. And it's been an unbelievable 3 or 4 year run since Texas OU and beyond. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Continued great luck, and appreciate your time today.
I always appreciate you guys. Holler anytime you need anything.
Cole Cubelic, ESPN SEC Network college football analyst. I like what he said at the end. Not just